Greetings, my brethren, and greetings to all of you who tune in from time to time to just listen to our messages. I've been talking to someone who been listening to our messages and just asked me to continue posting messages. So today I want to talk about plagues. What about plagues? What is it? Its definition: an epidemic disease that causes high mortality, pestilence, and infection. Epidemic disease caused by a bacterium, characterized by fever, chills, and prostration transmitted to human from rat, flea, bites, and so on. And then it went on to say, compare any widespread affliction, calamity, or evil, especially one regarded as a direct punishment from God. So when we look at plague, the Bible also talks about pestilence, right? And plagues are diseases, pestilence. Jesus talked about pestilence, and he talked about it in Matthew 24 and verse 7. It says here, as he was talking about events and things that will happen when he leaves this earth to when he comes back. So within that time span, he talked about things to expect on this planet. And we share space with everybody else. So it means that we're not immune from the things that Jesus is talking about. And that is why from time to time we ask God to protect us, to shield us, to be there for us. Because we know we share space with everybody, whether in some places it's war-torn communities and countries, and just different things that can be going on. Jesus said in verse 7, "For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famine and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places." So he's talking about pestilence here, plagues, things that will plague us, things that will plague this world. In Luke 21 and verse 11, Luke 21 verse 11, it says here, "And great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famine and pestilence, and fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven." So we talk a lot about wars and earthquakes and natural disasters. But Jesus is talking about diseases that can have lasting effect on our planet and in our communities, in our cities, and countries. Not just wars. They lead to famine, of course, and they can lead to various diseases. Of course, there are some that are self-inflicted, is what I would say, based on some of the things we may ingest. And so we can become sick. And what we're finding out is sometimes these can be transmitted from human to human. So let me share some things with you. Because as much as Jesus is saying there would be pestilence, so we got to expect that these various things to happen within that time span. Ever heard of the Black Death? Ever heard of Black Death? Well, that was a plague. It came about in the 13th century, and I'll read a little bit about it. The Black Death was a devastating global epidemic of bubonic plague that struck Europe and Asia in the mid-13th century. The plague arrived in Europe in October 1347, when 12 ships from the Black Sea docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. People gathered on the docks were met with a horrifying surprise. Most sailors aboard the ship were dead, and those still alive were gravely ill and covered in black boils and oozed blood and pus. Sicilian authorities hastily ordered the fleet of that ship out of the harbor, but it was too late. Over the next 5 years, the Black Death will kill more than 20 million people in Europe, almost a third of the continent's population. A pestilence, a plague, a disease. Even before the black ship pulled into port at Messina, many Europeans had heard rumors about a great pestilence that were carving a deadly path across the trade routes of the Near and Far East. Indeed, in the early 1340s, the disease had struck China, India, Persia, Syria, and Egypt. It is estimated that in Eurasia, 75 to 200 million people died from the plague. 75 to 200 million people died. So where is Eurasia? Eurasia is Europe and Asia combined. So these two continents, the death toll were between 75 and 200 million people. That is why doctors and scientists are in such a panic whenever there are outbreaks. And this was the 13th century. And one might think, well, it was harder to control these diseases. Maybe so. I won't question that. And I believe with every disease, they get a better understanding of that disease, and they would prepare for it in case it rises up later. So they develop antibiotics and so on to fight these diseases. So how about the 20th century? I want to show you just some of the worst outbreak in the 20th century. And here's what scientists are predicting or looking at. More people could mean more diseases spreading around the globe. It is estimated that the world's population will reach 11 billion by 2021. How far away is that? I mean, it's just a year away from that, right? And I don't know what the population is now. Maybe some of you know. But it will reach 11 billion. And one of the consequences of this population rise will be new challenges to controlling disease outbreaks, scientists say. The population rise is also likely to burst the increasing the increase in rate of new infectious diseases caused by emergent viruses and drug-resistant bacteria. A trend that has already been observed over the past few decades. Scientists are keeping an eye on new viruses that may cause the next pandemic and are trying to find new cures for pathogens that have long been present in human history but are developing resistance to available drugs. So they went on to mention the 5 most deadliest in the 20th century. So there was an influenza that killed an estimated 50 to 100 million people in 1918. All right? I think they still talk about it. It was that bad. All right? So we're talking about in 2013, in the 13th century, 75 to 200 million people died from what is called the Black Death, a plague, as they refer to it. And as Jesus also tells us to expect these things. And going on, okay, I'm sorry. All right. So, all right, there we go. That's all right. And then we have, in 2009, the swine flu. Many of us heard about the swine flu, right? Pandemic that took thousands of lives. Different strains of influenza viruses have caused some of the deadliest outbreak of the past century. This group of pathogens is one of the most closely watched due to the enormous pandemic threat. In its seasonal epidemic, the virus infects up to 50% of the population it hits. Annual epidemics are thought to result in between 3 million to 5 million cases of severe illness and between 250,000 to 500,000 deaths every year around the world, according to the World Health Organization. It continues. The ever-changing virus has gone through several major mutations in the past century and has been able to repeatedly spread to humans through domestic animals. Significant outbreaks caused by the virus include the Asian flu in 1957, Hong Kong flu in 1968, which each caused several million deaths worldwide, and the swine flu in 2009. And then we all know of SARS, right? It stands for Acute Respiratory Syndrome, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. So this disease, Toronto suffered a lot with it. It was in 2002 when it started in China. And within weeks, spread to 37 countries. How did that happen? By air travel. The virus infected 8,000 people worldwide, and about 800 died from it. And now we have the coronavirus. And this one is causing a lot of problems. People are very nervous about it. And of course it started again, this one started in China, as did SARS. And so this coronavirus is creating quite a stir for a lot of people, nervous communities. I hear on CBC where doctors and community leaders are calling on the city not to be so, in their own words, racist against a particular group of people who never traveled to China. But these are some of the problems, as Jesus said to us, that in Matthew 24:7, if I go back to that verse, these pestilence, and in Luke 21, I just want to quickly revisit the verse because it says a lot. In Luke 21 and verse 11, it says here that pestilence and fearful sights and great signs that will be from heaven. People will be fearful, people will be worried. We've experienced things like that before. But these are the times that we live in. These plagues will continue to develop. These pestilence, as Jesus said, we will continue to experience those. It won't get any better. The good thing for us is that we know, we understand that it is coming. Because our master, our leader, told us to expect it. Look out for it. For wars, for rumors of wars, earthquakes. There are so many earthquakes that are popping up just for January alone. Right? But these pestilence, these diseases, these are not the same that we're going to read about in a minute. These things will happen. They will naturally happen through human behavior or just, interacting with animals. Fleas, you can be bitten by fleas and get infected and pass it on. And so in the summer you will always hear to be careful with fleas. It can be very deadly. But the Bible talks about other plagues that are literally controlled by God. No one has control over it. No medication can cure it. Because God will control, and He has controlled plagues in the past. And the earth will experience that again. Turn with me to Revelation 16. The one way to escape these plagues is to be with Jesus Christ. That's the one way to escape these plagues that we are going to read here. And I will let the verses speak for themselves. In verse 1, and I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the seven angels, go away and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. So, a topic for another time. But this is controlled. It is directed to a specific group of people, not race. Not a race of people, but a group of people. And they can be of all race, because it's saying those that worship the beast, who is the beast, and his image. This plague will be upon them, and it will be a grievous sore. Now we think about the Black Death. It was like boils and sores, big like lemon and just like eggs, different sizes. They describe these pus that people develop under their armpits and so on, in different places. I'm not going to tell you the different places right now. But yeah, all kinds of places. And it was horrible there in the 13th century. But people will experience that. A particular group of people that worship the beast and his image. Right? The second angel poured his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. So there again, right? This is another plague that will affect the sea. The waters will turn like blood. And the third angel poured his vial upon the rivers and the fountains of the water, and they became blood. And I heard the angel of the waters say, Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and was and shall be, because thou hast judged thus. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. And I heard another out of the altar say, Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are thy judgments. So these plagues will occur after the saints are caught up to be with Jesus Christ. The idea that everything will dissolve is not true. People will be on this planet, and some of them will live through some of these plagues. So, the second plague, we see blood, the waters, it's like the sea, and this is the sea, and now we say upon the fountain of waters. So whether it be lakes or rivers. And the fourth angel poured his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which had power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. Now, we've seen the fires in Australia. We've seen fires in California. We've seen fires in Greece. These extreme hot places. We've seen fire in Canada as well. But this is what the Word of God is telling us. I'm telling you, it cannot be compared. I don't know, but it seems as though the heat we complain about cannot be compared to that which is coming. It is telling us beforehand that plagues are coming in all the different forms. All different forms, they're coming. So, saying that man will be so hot, they won't be able to cool themselves down. They will be dehydrated all the time. And those things can lead to different diseases as well. But in this plague, man will be so bitter because they will realize that these plagues are coming from God. So they're not cursing the governments, the king, the prime minister, the president. No. Who are they cursing? God. They blaspheme his name. They curse him. Is that all you got? The prophet would say, why don't you make it a little harder? Okay. How about cranking it up 7 times harder? See how you can manage with that. So that is what the Word of God is telling us to expect in these plagues that are controlled by God. What we're talking about, these pestilence, Jesus is saying, these are natural occurrences, but they will increase. And we have no idea how. No, we find out, scientists are telling us, the increased population and the movement of people causes these viruses to spread from country to country in a very fast pace, so much that it's very, very hard for them to control. It takes a lot of work for them to try to control these diseases, and as much as they try, they still get through. And we're seeing that presently today. So these are some of the things will happen. So the 5th angel poured his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their teeth for pain, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds. Alright? So I think of the various things that can happen. We think of the Black Death and the sores and so on. We think of acute respiratory disease, lung disease, all these things that can happen in epidemics. And that's what the coronavirus is all about, and even the SARS virus. So there we have it. Even the river Euphrates, I'll read this verse. The 6th angel poured his vial upon the river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up. Right? And then it went on to say that the ways of the kings of the east might prepare. But think about this. How many people depends on that water? The river Euphrates. Think about the millions of people that depends on it. It will be no more there. It will be dried up in this plague. When the 6th angel sung. These are controlled. God is sending them in specific places to those that are disobedient to Him. The obedient children of God are with Jesus at this time. But here, these men will have to deal with these plagues, epidemic, pestilence, pandemic. Just think about it. All the panic that will be going on around the world, even as we talk about the coronavirus today, because people all over the world travel to China the same way they travel to the United States and Canada and various places. People from the Caribbean, here in Canada, America, there is that interconnection that is going on. And so if a person is infected here and they don't know, until they return to their place and then realize they're not feeling well, or maybe jet lag. No, it is, it's something else. And before you know it, 4 or 5 people has it. So, but Jesus is saying that it will happen. It will happen. And we got to be ready for it, because we are not immune from it. Because we interact with people. We don't isolate ourselves. We cannot isolate ourselves. And we should not isolate ourselves. We are the salt of the earth. We are the light of the world. So, because we interact with people, it is possible that we can become infected as well. We do not blame God when we get sick. We praise God. We praise God. We change nothing. We continue to worship Him. This reminds me of David David had sinned a terrible sin. He knew it was bad after he made the decision. He was counseled not to number the people. His advisor said to him, bad idea. God is the one that added to his people. Do not do it. David did it. And after he did it, he was smitten. I want you to turn to that verse. 2 Samuel 24. 2 Samuel 24. It says in verse 12, go say unto David. That's after David had numbered the people. God sent Gad, the prophet, to David. Go say unto David, thus saith the Lord, I offer thee 3 things. Choose one of them, that I may do it unto thee. So Gad went, and he told David. So in verse 13, let me read it. God came to David and told him and said unto him, shall 7 years of famine come unto thee in thy land? Or wilt thou flee 3 months before thine enemies, while they pursue thee? Or that there be 3 days pestilence in thy land? Now advise, and see what answer I shall return to him that sent me. And David said unto God, I am in a great strait. Let us fall now into the hand of the Lord, for his mercies are great. And let me not fall into the hand of man. So the Lord sent a pestilence upon the land, upon Israel, from the morning even to the time appointed. And there died of the people from Dan even to Beersheba 70,000 men. 70,000. So, God is no respecter of people. David did a horrible thing. God was not pleased. God judged. I want to say this too, that God speaks to us in different ways. Right? God can speak to us through his prophet. He can speak to us himself. Or through his judgment. We are fortunate to have Jesus today speaking to us. When these judgments start, there will be no communication going on between earth and heaven. That's all the communication going on here. If there is any judgment, God will be dealing with man on earth through these plagues. So, I recall when God directly spoke to Moses and said, I want you to go to Pharaoh and say to him, let my people go. That was a message, that we may serve our God in these mountains. That was the message, to go to Pharaoh. Repetitive message. Moses could not add or take away from it. Simple. So, Moses went, and God said to Moses that he will show his signs and wonders before Pharaoh. But God knew what the outcome would be. See, when the people, the Israelites, were in Egypt in good times, they built up the land. They had no fear of anything. But then the nation became worried that this group of people were having life too easy. They were multiplying. We having problems having children. Why they not have it? Look at all these things they got. Why are we struggling and they are prospering? That's all right. So they enslaved the people. And then they cried unto the Lord, and the Lord sent Moses to deliver them. And God did speak to Moses in that burning bush. And God gave Moses that rod and said, this is what you will do. You will put that rod down and it will become a serpent. Well, the Pharaoh magicians did it too. And we saw the power of God. But then, remember God said that he will plague Egypt. And this is what he did. The first plague was blood in Exodus 7:25. Was blood at the end. It was 7 days. Moses stretched out his rod as he instructed Aaron to touch the waters that it may become blood. And it turned blood for 7 days. They could not drink the water and it stank. And then they went on to have frogs everywhere. And the beds, as according to the scriptures, in the kitchens, throughout the land. And with every plague, Pharaoh called on Moses, please. So the water came back. Okay, the people dug all around the water looking for good water to drink. It was all blood. The power of God. So God can speak through his power. That's wow. Right? So we see him speaking to Moses. We see his power being executed here. This is me. And then the frogs, lice, darkness for 3 days in Exodus 10:21 to 23. 3 days, no one left their place. They could not even see each other. It was so dark. Guess who had no problem? The children of Israel in Goshen. They had none of these plagues on them. God was showing his wonders in Egypt, his power. He was speaking to the pharaohs through his powers and his wonders. What is it? They could not describe this thing. The magician said, we cannot fight these. The lice came up from the dust and infected all the animals, and everybody had lice. All the dust had lice. The whole land was filled with frogs, and when Moses got the situation under control, the whole land was stink. Because it was built up with frogs, just the water, as Pharaoh asked Moses, keep these only in the water. The whole land was filled with frogs. God had control. God also brings, I'll read this last verse to you. This a plague upon the children of Israel. And before I read that, I said 10 plagues, right? I didn't get to the 10th one. The 10th one was the firstborn that died in Egypt. And Israel had to do one thing and one thing only to save themselves. Kill a lamb and put the blood on the posts of the house to protect themselves. You see how much people are wearing masks these days to protect themselves. That is what God asked Israel to do to save their firstborn. And so when the angel of death came through Egypt, just same way when the angel went over Israel when David sinned, and when the angel was getting to Jerusalem, the Lord repented. The Lord, as David had said, the Lord is merciful. He rather fall in the hands of man, of God, rather than the hands of man. And so God was in control. God was in control of what was going on in Egypt. And this is what he was doing to his people again. In Numbers 14. Numbers 14 verse 27. The Lord is so displeased, he says, and this is after they went to spy the land and all that stuff. He says, how long shall I bear with this evil congregation which murmur against me? I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmured against me. Verse 29, your carcasses shall fall in the wilderness, and all that were numbered of you, according to your whole number, from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me. Verse 35, I, the Lord, have said, I will surely do it unto all this evil congregation that are gathered together against me. In this wilderness they shall be consumed, and there they shall die. And the men which Moses sent to search the land, who returned and made all the congregation to murmur against him, to bring up a slander upon the land, even those men that did bring up evil report upon the land, died by the plague before the Lord. Alright? So, if you ever wondered how is it that from 20 years upward died, that was God's doing from this plague. From 20 years. Over 600 people came out of Egypt on the journey to the promised land by that plague. So, my brother, as we see these viruses happening in the world, know that we are in the end time, we are getting closer and closer. Not only are we seeing these pestilence, these plagues, these diseases coming up, but we are also dealing with war and natural disasters, fires. All these things will happen while we're here before Jesus Christ comes back. As we deal with plagues today, we got to remember that these are the words of God. We should not become hard-hearted. We should give ourselves to the Lord, because the day of judgment is coming. He's speaking to us today. As he did in the past, he spoke to his people through his prophets. We know he speaks to us through his Son Jesus Christ these last days. Through the power of his Holy Spirit, he transmits messages to his ministers of his church to speak unto his congregation. And he's saying to us today, don't be scared. Don't be afraid. Don't be worried. What man may think about us when they see us because we look a certain way, then we must be full of diseases, or we must be criminals. We cannot escape these things, but we can escape the sins of this world to be with Jesus when he comes the second time. God bless you.
Amen.